Destiny brought them face to face 15 years later. The truth shattered everything they thought they knew. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about a love story that started in the most ordinary place you could imagine. A small town called Riverside, nestled in the heart of California, where the summer air always smelled like fresh bread from the local bakery and blooming jasmine from the gardens. This is where Daniel Carter first laid eyes on Isabel Santos. He was 15 years old. Just a kid, really. Tall and awkward, with dreams bigger than his small-town life. She was 12, quiet and thoughtful, with a sketchbook she carried everywhere like it held all her secrets. They met at a community center during rehearsals for a youth talent show. The coordinator called their names to perform together, and Daniel remembers walking across that room, his heart beating fast for reasons he didn't understand yet. Isabel stood by the window, sunlight catching in her dark hair, and when she looked up at him and smiled, something inside him shifted. It was like the world had been black and white, and suddenly there was color. From that first practice session, they just clicked. You know how sometimes you meet someone, and it feels like you've known them forever? That's what it was like. They rehearsed their lines, laughed when Daniel forgot his cues, which happened a lot, and slowly, they became inseparable. After rehearsals, Daniel started walking Isabel home. Her father owned a small bakery called Santos Sweets on the corner near the community center. The windows were always foggy with warmth, and the smell of cinnamon rolls floated out onto the street. Mr. Santos welcomed Daniel from day one, greeting him with a big smile and hot chocolate that was always too sweet but perfect. They fell into a routine. Daniel would sit in the same corner booth doing homework while Isabel sketched. She drew him without asking, her pencil moving across paper like magic. He loved watching her create. The way she bit her lip when concentrating. The way she saw beauty in everything. One afternoon, she slid a drawing across the table. It was him, bent over his books, looking more handsome than he thought possible. "You made me look better than I really am," he said softly. "No," she replied, her eyes meeting his. "You just don't see yourself the way I see you." That's when Daniel called her beautiful for the first time. He said it quietly, reverently, like the word was too precious to say out loud. Isabel's cheeks turned red, and she looked away, but she was smiling. After that, they were together constantly. At the community center, at the bakery, walking through town talking about their dreams. Daniel told her he wanted to build something important one day, something that would help people. Isabel told him she wanted to teach art to children, to help them see their own worth. "You will," Daniel promised her. "You're going to change lives." And she believed him. Somehow, she always believed in him. What they had was pure and innocent. First love in its truest form. But their worlds were very different, and those differences were about to tear them apart. Daniel's parents were wealthy. Not just comfortable, but truly rich. His father ran Carter Technologies, one of the biggest tech companies on the West Coast. His mother attended charity events and lived a life of luxury that most people only saw in magazines. Isabel came from a working-class family. Her father woke up at 4 in the morning to bake bread. Her mother had passed away when she was young, and they lived simply, happily, but without any of the wealth the Carters had. And there was something else. Something that shouldn't have mattered, but did. Isabel's family was Latino. In a perfect world, that wouldn't mean anything. But we don't live in a perfect world. When Daniel's parents saw how close their son was getting to Isabel, they panicked. They never said the quiet part out loud. They just used words like inappropriate and different backgrounds, and what would people think? But Daniel understood what they really meant. So they made plans. Secret plans. Behind closed doors, they pulled strings and called in favors. One day, Daniel came home to find an acceptance letter waiting for him. A full scholarship to an elite engineering program in San Francisco, hours away from Riverside. His parents acted thrilled. Daniel felt sick because he knew this wasn't about education. This was about separating him from the girl he loved. The night before he had to leave, Daniel walked to Santos Sweets one last time. Isabel was helping her father close up, wiping down tables. When she saw Daniel standing there with tears in his eyes, her whole face changed. "What's wrong?" she whispered. "My parents are sending me to San Francisco," he said, his voice breaking. "I leave tomorrow." The cloth fell from her hands. "Tomorrow? But I thought you were staying here for your senior year." "So did I." Her father quietly stepped into the back room, giving them privacy. Isabel reached for Daniel's hands, and they were shaking. So this is it. You're leaving. No. Daniel shook his head fiercely. I'm coming back. I swear to you, Isabel. I'll always come back for you. Don't make promises you can't keep, she whispered through her tears. He pressed her hand to his chest, right over his heart. Feel that. As long as my heart is beating, I'll find my way back to you. Always. They hugged for the first time, holding on like if they let go, they'd lose each other forever. And in a way they did. Because sometimes life doesn't care about promises. Sometimes 15 years pass before you can keep them. San Francisco was everything Riverside wasn't. Fast, cold, filled with strangers who never looked you in the eye. Daniel threw himself into his studies because it was easier than thinking about what he'd left behind. His parents moved quickly to expand their empire. They opened Carter Innovations, a cutting-edge tech company that attracted the best minds from around the world. And Daniel, brilliant as he was, rose through the ranks faster than anyone expected. At 20, he was a project lead. At 25, vice president. By 28, he was running entire divisions, making decisions that affected thousands of employees. On paper, his life looked perfect. Penthouse apartment with views of the bay. Cars that cost more than most people's houses. Invitations to exclusive parties where champagne flowed, and everyone wanted to know him. But here's what the magazines and websites didn't show. Every birthday, he wondered what Isabel was doing. Every holiday, he thought about that little bakery. Every night, standing in his expensive apartment looking out at the glittering city, he felt completely alone. His mother tried to set him up constantly. Daughters of business partners, fashion models, lawyers, doctors. Beautiful, successful women who should have been perfect for him. But Daniel never dated any of them. Not seriously. Because how do you fall in love with someone else when your heart still belongs to a girl who used to draw you in a bakery booth? His friends thought he was too picky. His parents thought he was wasting his potential. But the truth was simpler and sadder than that. He was waiting. Even if he didn't admit it to himself, he was always waiting. The years blurred together. 20, 22, 25, 27. Life moved forward, but his heart stayed frozen in time, stuck in that moment when he had to say goodbye to the only person who ever really saw him. He told himself he was being ridiculous. That Isabel had probably moved on, met someone else, built a life without him. That he should do the same. But every time he tried, something stopped him. A laugh that wasn't quite right. A smile that didn't reach deep enough. A conversation that felt empty. None of them were her. 3 weeks before his 30th birthday, Daniel woke up in his penthouse and realized something terrifying. He had everything he thought he wanted and absolutely nothing that mattered. Success? Yes. Money. More than he could spend. Respect? Everyone in the tech world knew his name. But happiness? Love? Connection? He had none of it. He thought about Isabel. About her laugh, her drawings, the way she believed in him when he was just an awkward 15-year-old with big dreams. The way she saw good in him that no one else bothered to look for. He couldn't take it anymore. That morning, at breakfast, his mother was talking about his birthday party. "We've invited everyone who matters," she said. "Politicians, investors, the mayor." Daniel set down his coffee. "I'm going away this weekend." His parents stared at him. He never went anywhere except for business. "Where?" his father asked suspiciously. "To see an old friend." Before they could ask more questions, Daniel grabbed his keys and walked out. He drove straight to his office, cleared his schedule, and started driving south. The drive to Riverside felt like traveling back in time. Roads he used to bike on. Streets where he and Isabel used to walk. Places that still whispered her name. And then there it was. Santos Suites. Same brick building, same faded awning, same smell of cinnamon and fresh bread drifting onto the sidewalk. Daniel's hands were shaking as he pushed open the door. Mr. Santos looked up from behind the counter. For a long moment, he just stared. Then recognition flooded his face. "Daniel Carter?" he said slowly, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Is that really you?" "Hi, Mr. Santos," Daniel managed, his throat tight. The older man came around the counter and pulled him into a hug. When he stepped back, there were tears in his eyes. "She never stopped hoping you'd come back," he said quietly. "Every single year, she hoped." Daniel's breath caught. "She did." Mr. Santos nodded, smiling through his tears. "She's not here right now. She runs an art center for kids across town. Built it from nothing." The pride in his voice was unmistakable. He scribbled an address on a napkin and pressed it into Daniel's hand. "Go. She'll want to see you." Daniel's hand trembled as he took the address. After 15 years, he was finally going to see her again. The children's art studio was in a converted warehouse, the outside painted with bright murals. Children's laughter floated through the open doors. Daniel stepped inside, his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. And then he saw her. Isabel was across the room, helping a little girl wash paint off her hands. She was older now, her features more defined, her presence stronger. But she was still her. Still the girl who had stolen his heart in a community center when he was 15. "Isabel," he whispered. She looked up. Their eyes met. For a second, she didn't recognize him. Why would she? He wasn't that skinny teenager anymore. His shoulders were broader, his face more mature, his entire presence different. But then her eyes widened. Her lips parted. The paintbrush slipped from her fingers. "Daniel," she breathed. He nodded, unable to speak. She walked toward him slowly, like she thought he might disappear. Her hand reached up, trembling, touching his face to make sure he was real. "You came back," she whispered. "After all these years, you actually came back." He covered her hand with his own. "I promised, didn't I?" And then she was crying, and he was pulling her into his arms, holding her like he'd waited half his lifetime for this moment. Because he had. They talked for hours that day. Sitting in her small office while kids played in the studio outside, they caught up on 15 years of life. Isabel told him about building the art center from scratch. How she'd worked 3 jobs to save money. How she'd convinced the city to let her use the abandoned warehouse. How she'd painted every wall herself. She told him about the children she taught, kids from struggling families who needed a safe place to create and dream. Daniel told her about San Francisco, about building his career, about the emptiness that came with success. He didn't tell her about all the women his mother had tried to set him up with, but somehow she knew anyway. "You never got married?" she asked softly. "No. Why not?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and said the truth. "Because none of them were you." Isabel's breath caught. The air between them felt electric, charged with 15 years of unspoken feelings. As the sun started to set, painting the sky orange and pink, Daniel took a deep breath. "Isabel, my 30th birthday is in 2 weeks. There's a party in San Francisco. I want you there. Please." She hesitated, old fears clouding her eyes. "Daniel, your parents never wanted me around." "I don't think. I don't care what they wanted," he interrupted firmly. "I want you. I want us." She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. "Your world pushed me out once. I don't know if I can survive it happening again." He stepped closer, tilting her chin up so she had to look at him. "You belong wherever I am. And I belong with you. That's all that matters." Finally, she nodded. "Okay, I'll come." But as Daniel drove back to San Francisco that night, Isabel sat in her empty studio, fear curling in her chest. She wanted to believe this could work. But deep down, she was terrified that his world would break her heart all over again. The night of the party arrived. The Carter mansion blazed with lights, limousines pulling up one after another. Women in designer gowns, men in expensive suits. Everyone who was anyone in San Francisco society. Daniel stood near the entrance, greeting guests with polite smiles, but his eyes kept drifting to the door. He barely heard the compliments, the business proposals, the flirtations. He was waiting for one person. Then a simple sedan pulled up, and Isabel stepped out. She wore a deep blue dress that made her skin glow. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked beautiful, and she looked terrified. When she walked into the ballroom, whispers started immediately. "Who is she? Look at that dress." I've never seen her before. But Isabel saw none of it. She only saw Daniel, walking straight toward her with eyes that held everything. "Isabel," he breathed. "Hi," she whispered. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." He took her hand in front of everyone. Gasps rippled through the crowd. His parents, across the room, turned and froze. But Daniel didn't care. He held her hand tighter and led her into his world, introducing her to everyone who mattered. "This is Isabel Santos. She's very important to me." Every time he said it, Isabel's heart pounded harder. Some people smiled. Others looked confused. A few looked disapproving. But Daniel never left her side. Hours passed. Cake was cut, gifts opened, toasts made. And the entire time, Daniel's parents watched with growing concern. When the last guest left, Daniel turned to Isabel. "Stay here. There's something I need to do." She nodded, and he walked toward his parents, jaw set, ready for the fight of his life. The study felt cold when the door closed. Daniel's parents stood by the fireplace, waiting. "What was that display tonight?" his father demanded. "Parading that girl around like." "Don't finish that sentence," Daniel warned, his voice deadly calm. His mother stepped in quickly. "Sweetheart, we're just worried. That young woman, your worlds are so different. You barely know her anymore." "I know her," Daniel said firmly. "Better than I've ever known anyone." "And what exactly is she to you?" his father asked. Daniel met their eyes steadily. "The woman I love. And the woman I'm going to marry." Silence crashed through the room like thunder. His mother went pale. "Daniel, don't be ridiculous." "I'm not." His father's voice turned hard. "Then understand this. If you continue with her, you lose everything. The inheritance, the company, this house, every connection, every resource. All of it gone." His mother added desperately, "We're trying to protect your future. That girl has nothing. And mixing families like this." "Enough," Daniel said quietly. His mother flinched. "I built my career with my own hands," Daniel continued. "I earned every promotion, every success. But I won't sacrifice the woman I love for money or pride or your approval." His father's face reddened. "Then you're making a foolish choice." Daniel looked at them both, these people who raised him, and felt sad rather than angry. "I'd rather be poor with her than rich without her. That's not foolish. That's the smartest decision I've ever made." He turned to leave, but his mother's voice stopped him. "If you walk out that door with her, you'll regret it." Daniel looked back. "The only thing I've regretted is the 15 years I spent away from her. I'm not wasting another minute." He walked out, closing the door softly behind him. What Daniel didn't know was that the door hadn't been fully closed during their conversation. Isabel had come looking for him and heard everything. Every threat, every ultimatum, every consequence. And she realized, with her heart breaking, that loving him would destroy his life. She couldn't let that happen. She found the butler in the hallway. "Please don't tell Daniel I'm leaving," she whispered through tears. "Just tell him I'm sorry. Tell him to live the life he deserves." The butler hesitated, then nodded sadly. Isabel walked out into the cold San Francisco night and caught a taxi back to Riverside, crying the entire way. When Daniel came downstairs 10 minutes later, she was gone. "She left," the butler said quietly. "She asked me to tell you she's sorry." Daniel didn't hesitate. He ran upstairs, threw clothes into a bag, grabbed his car keys, and drove into the night. His parents could keep their money, their company, their mansion. None of it mattered without her. He drove through the darkness, his hands gripping the wheel, his heart pulling him home to Riverside like a compass needle finding north. When he reached Isabel's small house at dawn, she was sitting on the porch steps, knees drawn to her chest, crying. She looked up when she heard the car. Shock filled her face. "Daniel, what are you?" He walked straight to her, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her forehead. "I didn't lose anything. I found you." Isabel broke down completely. "Your parents, your inheritance. Can keep it all," he said firmly. "I don't need any of it. I only need you. This will change your whole life." He smiled through his own tears. "So did you. 15 years ago, you changed everything. This is just me finally choosing what matters." And right there, on her porch as the sun rose over Riverside, they began again. As equals, as partners, as two hearts finally choosing each other. Daniel moved into a small apartment 2 blocks from Isabel's art studio. He traded his designer suits for jeans and paint-stained t-shirts. He helped repair furniture, painted murals, organized supply donations, and taught the older kids basic coding and robotics. The children loved him. Parents admired him. And Isabel fell deeper in love with him every single day. Together, they transformed the art center. Daniel used his business skills to secure grants and donations. They added new classrooms, started after-school programs, even created a small tech corner where kids could learn about computers and engineering. Local news caught wind of the story. Billionaire's son trades corporate life for community service. Tech executive finds purpose teaching art to kids. Every article made its way back to the Carters. They watched their son smiling in paint-covered clothes, surrounded by laughing children. He didn't look broken. He looked happier than they'd ever seen him. One evening, 3 months after Daniel had left, his phone rang. His mother's name appeared on the screen. Daniel stared at it. Isabel squeezed his arm. "Answer it." He did. "Daniel," his mother's voice was soft, almost fragile. "Could we see you? Please." His father came on the line. "Son, we were wrong. About everything. That young woman, Isabel, she's remarkable. And you're not unhappy. You're more yourself than you've ever been. Daniel's chest tightened. You can marry anyone you choose, his mother continued, crying now. We won't stand in your way. We just want our son back. We miss you. Daniel looked at Isabel through his own tears. Can you give me a chance to make this right with them? She nodded, smiling through her tears. That night, after the call, Daniel pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. His hands were shaking. The next morning, he went to the art center. Isabel was teaching a group of kids how to blend colors, her face bright with joy. When she saw him, something in his expression made her stop. Kids, give us a minute, okay? They scattered, giggling, and Isabel walked over. Daniel? What's? He dropped to one knee right there on the paint-splattered floor, surrounded by children's artwork. Isabel Santos, he said, voice thick with emotion. You were the first person who ever really saw me. Not my last name, not my money, not my future. Just me. You've been my heart since I was 15 years old. Even when I couldn't be with you, you were always there. He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. Will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you? Isabel's hand flew to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, she sobbed. Yes, Daniel. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms while she cried against his chest. The wedding brought together two families that had once seemed impossible to unite. Daniel's parents reached out to Isabel's father, helping him expand Santos Sweets. They donated supplies to the art center. Slowly, carefully, they built bridges across the divide. The ceremony took place in a beautiful garden filled with flowers and sunlight. When Isabel walked down the aisle in her ivory dress, Daniel cried. He didn't even try to hide it. They spoke their vows through tears and laughter, promising forever to each other while both families, finally united, stood and applauded. Their honeymoon was quiet and perfect. 2 weeks in the mountains where they hiked and talked and healed from all the years apart. 1 year later, Isabel gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. When the nurse placed the babies in their arms, Daniel looked at his wife and whispered, "We made this. After everything, we made this." Both sets of grandparents arrived at the hospital, crying happy tears, fighting playfully over who got to hold the babies first. The twins' first birthday party was held at the Carter estate, a symbolic gesture. The grounds were filled with bounce houses, art stations, and more balloons than anyone could count. Children from the art center played alongside Daniel's business associates' kids. Isabel's father brought cupcakes from the bakery. Daniel's parents welcomed him with genuine warmth. As the sun set, casting golden light across the celebration, Daniel wrapped his arms around Isabel from behind. Their children laughed and played, their families smiled together, and everything felt complete. "We made it," Isabel whispered. "We did," Daniel agreed, kissing her temple. "It took 15 years, but we made it. Was it worth the wait?" He turned her to face him, looking into her eyes with all the love he'd carried for half his life. "Every second of waiting led me back to you. So yes, it was worth everything." And as their children laughed and the families who once stood apart now stood together, Daniel knew he had finally found what he'd been searching for all along. Not success, not wealth, not approval. Just love. Real, patient, unshakable love. The kind of love worth waiting for. The kind of love that lasts forever. The end. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfect timing. They're about never giving up on the person who was always meant to be yours.